Thusiyan Nandakumar is the editor-in-chief of the Tamil Guardian and joins me now live from London. Doctor, the protesters seemingly have gotten what they want, with the president and prime minister saying they'll resign. What do you make of the events of the day?
I think there's still, unfortunately, a long way to go. As we know, unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, 4 days, it can be a very, very long time. So there hasn't actually been any official word from Gotabaya Rajapaksa as of yet. It's just a word from the Speaker of the Parliament that he pledges to resign. So we're still waiting to see. I don't think we can say the protesters have got what they want yet. And I think we're also a long way away from any form of stability and prosperity for the island. Sri Lanka's in crisis at the moment, but it's been in crisis for months economically, and a much larger crisis for years. There's been several years of cycles of flare-ups of violence, whether it's communal or whether there's clashes, and obviously a very deadly decades-long war that it's still yet to recover from. So there is hope, but I think we have to be very, very cautious in terms of speculating on the next steps.
So what does this all mean politically for Sri Lanka? The Rajapaksa family has been in power for a very long time.
Yes, exactly. I mean, they have been in power for a long time, but they do stand accused of some grave, grave crimes. So it's not just Mahinda Rajapaksa. Gotabaya Rajapaksa himself stands accused of overseeing human rights violations. He's openly admitted to bombing hospitals. He's accused of a genocide. He's accused of overseeing the deaths of tens of thousands. And I think seeing the violence in the streets today by the security forces, there's some horrific video footage of security forces assaulting protesters as well. So we know that these men and this regime is not will not shy away from using violence if they have to. So in terms of the security situation, we're still, somewhat on tenterhooks and shaky ground. Politically, like I said, I think there's some deep-rooted changes that need to happen. Simply switching the figureheads at the top of Sri Lanka's state probably won't address the deep-rooted economic issues and the ethnic conflict and so many other problems that are ongoing on the island. So we really need some deeper structural changes, and we're just at the starting point of any of that.
Right, clearly a long way to go before the country can achieve some level of stability. What do you think needs to happen next? What likely will happen next?
Yeah, well, I'd like to see the protesters, which have been very inspiring in some ways. I'd like to see them really be a lot more inclusive in their demands. So Gotabaya Rajapaksa shouldn't just go home. He should be held accountable, not just for his financial crimes, but also for his human rights violations, for the genocidal crimes that have taken place. All of Sri Lanka's leadership and the political hierarchy really needs to be held to account. And we need to see a fresh new wave of representation coming in from all across the island. So I think there really needs to be a revolutionary change of some sort, if you will, but it just needs something a lot bigger. So next steps would mean clearing the government out of all of these leaders who've been complicit in some of these abuses, bringing in a fresh new wave of leaders, whether that be through a general election, and really begin to start to tackle some of the deeper-rooted problems that Sri Lanka has, and some more structural changes, whether it's devolving power or being more accountable to the people who they ultimately rely on.
So you're in London, so watching this from afar. What do you make of the coverage and response to these protests?
So yeah, I mean, the coverage has been really overwhelming. I mean, you're seeing a lot of these protests, tens of thousands of protesters hit the street, and it's making news headlines from New York to London to Colombo and in Delhi. So it's really positive that it's getting that coverage and that Sri Lanka's making these headlines. But I think what we need to do is keep that international focus on Sri Lanka. I think Sri Lanka and Sri Lanka's leadership responds when international pressure is placed upon it. So I think Sri Lanka's leaders need to know that the whole world is watching every next move, and they can't simply get away with letting the protests die down and continuing to, say the same old story and sing the same old songs. I think we really do need some fresh change, and the international community has got to keep Sri Lanka accountable.
All right, Dr. Thusiyan Nandakumar joining us from London. Thank you.